Hi, board. Oh, you can hear me? Okay.
Yeah. Loud and clear.
Oh, wonderful. Hello, public. Well, we're just going to mute that.
Vincent, I'm sorry I didn't text you back yet, but I'll get in touch. I'll drop that stuff off one of these days.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you, Emily. I appreciate it. We're so excited.
Once it's full. I didn't get that. Yes. Right. Yes.
A little split camera view is a nice touch.
I know.
Yeah. You can. It's a 360 camera on the table in front of us. It's in that area. It's on top. Oh, is those white things? Yeah, it's gotta be the thing. All right, are we ready, everybody? The clocks are on, but it's already All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our combined committee meeting for January 18th. It's been a while, but good to be back here. We'll begin with courtesy of the floor. I had an email that I'll read here from Mr. Antalix. He tried to email the whole board through the website. It didn't work, so he sent it to me and asked that I read this. The MLK holiday has created a conflict with the city council meeting. which I will attend since I have this ongoing problem with them and Southside Historic Preservation. I do enjoy BASD meetings, but they do make me feel like the Maytag man in comparison to city council. All be well. Best wishes, Mr. Antonis. So even when he's not here, he's here. So he is at the city council meeting tonight. Anybody else for courtesy of the floor? We'll have another one at the end of the meeting, and seeing none, we'll jump right into our discussion items. The first one is the 2021 audit report. Everybody has a copy in front of them. It was also posted on board docs. Once again, another clean audit. They're really, Gorman and Associates are down to the nitty gritty trying to find things, I guess, to justify, prove that they looked at things. But it is a good problem to have. But Mrs. Gover, anything you want to fill in on this? It's pretty straightforward in the letter. Dr. Williams?
Well, I just wanted to review a few debits and credits. No, I'm kidding. As you know, like I didn't actually go to accounting class very often when I had it in college. But it's a clean audit, as the president Fashionado said, and we take that's like our norm, but we shouldn't take it as a given. It's a huge district, complex district, and for us to year after year have no findings is really actually amazing. And you know, Bo from Gorman said that when we did the finance kit or the audit committee meeting. And so just thank you to Stacy. I see Frank is here, Deb in the business office, all of our folks in the business office. It's got to take a team effort to make that happen, and to make it happen repeatedly is just fantastic. So thank you and congratulations, Stacy. You can hit what you'd like to hit after that.
So Bo had a conflict tonight and he was not able to join us, although we thought he would, but he's not. So you have less than stellar review from me on this, but if you want to look at pages 2 through 4 initially, which is their standard audit letter that would define any deficiencies if there were any. The only comments that they have are on page 4 related to.
Okay, we're looking at the hard copy.
Yeah.
The online copy is numbered page paginated a little different.
Yeah.
So that's okay. We'll use the hard copy.
So on page 4 is their only recommendation is about spending down federal programs, which we have been working with Dr. Draper to ensure that our largest concern is the non-public schools and spending their funding timely. So she has developed specific procedures that will address some accountability standards for the non-public schools to make sure that they are spending down their funds in a timely fashion so that we can have the goal of closing the grant timely. Because when you have to carry over funds year after year, it gets to be a little tedious at trying to keep track of things. And then there are some BASD statements that are going to be coming forward for the 21-22 school year that they've identified there that we're going to have to work through internally to have the appropriate information ready when they come in. The operating or the balance sheet and the statements are printed on pages 21 through 25. If you look on page 23 at the bottom, I'm just going to grab the items that people tend to gravitate towards, is our fund balance and the breakdown that was approved by the board previously. So you can see how each of the categories of fund balance are annotated on the bottom of page 23. And if you look at the bottom line on page 25, which is the statement of revenue and expenditures, it's a summary of our operating budget for all of the governmental funds in a much more condensed version than we live with it on a daily basis. But we did have a surplus at the end of the fiscal year of $7.7 million that I outlined in the memo that you can see where those changes came from, which really is primarily due to revenues that were at 99.1% of our budget, which is really unheard of. And the suspicion is that folks took their federal stimulus funds and used those to pay their taxes to get caught up on their delinquent outstanding tax. We are fortunate here in the Lehigh Valley as well to have a very robust economy, especially in Bethlehem. And we're fortunate to have been a beneficiary of the logistics market with a lot of the online ordering and online shopping. They kept our businesses running, kept our residents employed, and we had some very nice revenue coming through that we were not sure was going to be the case when we were developing the budget in spring of 2020. So we ended up the year in a good position. If anybody is interested in food service and daycare, those totals can be seen beginning on page 28. And if you look at page 30, you can see from a cash perspective, the real hurt that these service funds really incurred, given the fact that we were not charging for meals and we had limited daycare occupants. It took a toll on their profitability or ability to break even. So we'll have to continue to work on how do we get those two funds back on their feet. If you look on page 34, you can see the more detailed expansion of budget to actual. So you can see where we budgeted the funds at the original submission in July or would have been June for us here of 2020. But then after any budget transfers and then the actuals, to note where those variances were and how we got to the bottom line. If you look then in the supplemental section, which begins on page 101.
I'm sorry, Stacey, could we just present that page 34, just to give people time to look at page 34? With the budgeted final, original final and actual is what the audited numbers are, as Stacey said, and it shows you the variance. And I just wanted to highlight again a positive compliment. You know, for the size of the district with the unknowns going into last year, you know, our budgeted amounts were still very close, and there were some areas where we were under. That's also addressed on that memo. But it gives you an idea of you know, final versus actual spend there, and how we came up with the 7.5 million excess at the end of the budget year. So when Stacey mentioned the local sources, that's local taxes, primarily income, primarily property. You can see with those numbers, the actual is higher than what we had expected by $4 million, offset by other adjustments, but our local economy held pretty strong.
So in the supplemental section then, beginning on page 101, you can see the detail by fund of the revenues, expenses that are broken out in what I would consider to be a much more user-friendly version than the statements that you see in the front. So when you have a hard time falling asleep at 3:30 in the morning and you can't quite get your head to settle down, you can always read the back end of the supplementary information, and I'm sure that will cure your ill. Any questions?
Questions, comments? I mean, I go back to page 3 and 4, which are kind of glossed over quickly. $300 million budget, over 2,000 employees, and a huge operation across the board of everything we do. And there are no control deficiencies, no significant deficiencies, no material weaknesses. Nothing but a recommendation on the way we spend down some grant money, and then some information about a change with BASD and leases going forward. So that is an incredible accomplishment again, year after year. Just for think about all the clubs, all the student groups, all the activities, extracurriculars, building budgets, this and that, everything being reconciled back and properly managed correctly. That is an incredible accomplishment. We say it every year. Like Dr. Roy said, it's become routine, but you know, it's pretty impressive that not one thing slipped through where they could have been like, gotcha. So thank you, Mrs. Gober and Frank and Deb and the whole team that makes that happen. Really, one of the most important things to report every year is this audit showing that not only is taxpayer money spent wisely, it's spent in a good fiscal and fiduciary manner. It's one of our biggest jobs as a board is to make sure it's accounted for and spent properly. And once again, we can see the administration has done a great job with that and underspending the budget. It's been a long time since we overspent a budget, more than a decade. So good news. Dr. White, sorry.
So I do have a few questions, because I know what you brought up. What happens with that surplus?
So the surplus is identified on page 23. And those dollar amounts that are in there were approved in December, I believe, that outlined what would happen with the funds. So a portion of those funds are already earmarked to finance about $4.5 million of the current 21-22 budget. There is a PSERS rate stabilization fund, and then there will be about $4 million that is there will be $4 million transferred to capital reserve that will pay for the planned capital projects that we have for the upcoming year. That includes auditorium lighting, tennis court resurfacing, and the largest of which is a roof project that we expect to be in the millions. So
And that's the Freedom High School roof
Yes.
project? Is there any lingering HVAC update systems that also need to be addressed so that we continue our safety protocols for the building?
So that is part of what is expected to be funded using CARES and American Recovery funding through the federal ESSER funds. So we already completed Farmersville, and this summer we did Ace Attacker and
We've done Spring Garden.
Spring Garden. There are 3 projects that are slated for this summer of '22. And then depending on how these bids come in and what we have in remaining funds available, we would expect to do another 2 or 3 in summer of '23. So as part of the capital reserve fund, we will pay for the architectural fees because those we did not bid the professional services, therefore they exceed the federal bid limits. And we have to pay for those locally because we decided that we would remain with Dewey Engineering to drive those projects as our ongoing engineer for decades.
Yes. I just think it's great to know that, even if it means bearing reminding, but I think it's very good for us to know that the surplus isn't the tax rate. It's actually the investment that goes back into these buildings for long-term asset control. So thank you for explaining that. I appreciate that. Sure.
All right. Other questions, comments on the audit? All right.
Question.
Yes, Mr. Lozzi.
Yes, a brief two-parter. I'm so glad to hear that this went with very little and no findings, and I think it's important for the public to know that, like you all said, with the district at our size and so many things. Mrs. Goldberg, could you speak to briefly, if at all, what the process we go through in obtaining an auditor? So like, I guess what the bid process is, how long we maintain them, and how long did it take to get this particular audit done?
So let me take the last part of that first. So how long does it take to complete the audit? The audit team, which consists of anywhere between, I'd say 6 to 8 CPAs, tend to arrive in the district for a week in June. So they will do preliminary audit work for a week every June. And then they come back in October for 2 weeks, same team. And then they will finish up with about 2 days in December to complete the federal single audit. So all in, they're here between 3 and 4 weeks. Does that answer that portion of the question?
That certainly does. Yes, thank you.
And when they arrive with 6 to 8 CPAs, there's not a whole lot of other things that get done here at the time because we're always responding to one of their inquiries. So it
Go
can be a
find
little.
this, go search
stressful,
that.
but pull these records, et cetera. So they keep the business office staff hopping when they're here. In terms of selecting an audit firm, you can go out and select through an RFP process. And for the most part, public school audit is fairly well defined. So really you're looking at the experience and the resumes of the individual firm and the individual auditors that they maintain on their staff. For what is their level of expertise and experience. We did, I want to say it was maybe shortly after I arrived here, we did solicit pricing on RFPs and we maintained foremen. They were brought into the district in 2008, if I recall off the top of my head. It's either 2007 or 2008. And they really dug in and did a serious amount of digging and cleanup and recommendations on the fiscal conditions of the district at the time. We have maintained them since then, really primarily because of their thoroughness and their real resource on an annual basis. So all year long, we're able to reach out to them for any guidance or questions we might have. So it's a professional experience that extends beyond the month that they spend here in our offices, but they also are one of the premier auditing firms in the eastern part of Pennsylvania. They do an awful lot of work, not just in the Lehigh Valley, but in Bucks and Montgomery County as well. So they're very well respected and they have served us well.
Thank you so much for sharing that. The only reason why I asked, I'm not necessarily interested in looking about, but I think I thought it was important for us to express while we have these mediums to the public, the lengths and breadths that the district goes through to make sure that we're really, in fidelity with the public's money and working in that site. So thank you for that. That was a sufficient answer for me. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mr. Losey. Just to be clear, because it is a professional service, we're not required to bid it, say, every 3 years or every 5 years. It's similar to our solicitor. If we're satisfied and have good service, we don't have to go out to bid. So we've chosen not to for several years with them.
Thank you for that clarification.
I apologize if it was mentioned, but I did also want to just remind everybody that there's a committee of us that also met with regarding this and had a chance in a smaller setting to ask any detailed questions and get a full report. So it's not just now that we have the opportunity to see this and kind of dive into it. Craig, Dr. Donhart and I all sat on that this year.
Thanks for that. Other questions, comments? All right, then we'll move on. The second item on there is policy 701.1, which is the school district naming facilities. We talked about that back in December, I believe it was, and we're bringing it back here in January. So what you see in front of you there is the policy as it was currently written. No changes marked from last time. So Mr. Giordano, do you have some additional info for us on this one?
Just to say that because we're recommending that the policy be deleted in its entirety, that's why you don't see the usual draft with the cross-outs and the bolded new verbiage or anything like that.
Perfect. Last we discussed, if you recall, it was the kind of direction of the board at the time was just to eliminate the policy completely and make it easier. That's still the desire, because if it is, you'll notice it falls as an agenda item for a third and final reading next Monday, which would then eliminate the policy. Obviously, it can be brought back at any time with 3 readings once again if the future board decided to do that. But at this point, if it moves forward and is approved next week for deletion, that would eliminate the naming right policy completely.
Just that there are 2 types of naming rights, right? In consideration for money, contribution, sponsorship, or other commercial transactions. which we haven't named any parts of our facilities in response to that. And then naming rights in recognition of, which we've done twice since this policy has been put in place, which is what brought us to looking at it now. I would say that I would support the deletion or retirement of the policy. It doesn't prohibit the board if circumstances changed in the future to do something. There just wouldn't be a policy for it. Doesn't mean the board couldn't do it. But what it does is say we're not henceforth be open for. We don't have a process that says, hey, if you want to do this, bring it to us and we'll look at it. And that was for the reasons I think that we discussed it and the reason I supported retiring the policy is as a public district, buildings, facilities, overall should be named, not named for individuals. This would be the board's position going forward. It would retire this policy.
Questions? Everybody still good on this? All right. Then we will see that on the agenda when we get down below for next week, for Monday night. And then the last one there for discussion items is human resource policy, which is, board policy 206. This is the first reading dealing with our open enrollment policy and students moving around the district. Just some language clarification there. Towards the end, Mr. Giordano,
Yes,
specific you want to add to it?
Yes, so you'll notice this policy covers two things. It covers what we've come to know as elementary open enrollment, but it also covers what we call attendance exceptions. And attendance exceptions are occur when students either ask or are recommended to attend a different school in the district other than elementary. We're talking about middle school and high school. So there's a process for that. And we wanted to make certain that the policy reflects the reality of how it happens. So that's why you'll see on page 2, number 8, the administrative decision will be made within the established guidelines through the superintendent's office in consultation with the chief pupil services officer and the supervisor of child accounting and the building principal. That's how it happens. So attendance exceptions are not approved unless Claire is personally involved in that decision. And child accounting is there for their purposes, but they're not really making the decision. It's Claire working with the principal. And if they want my nickel, they ask for it. I'm more involved in the decisions around elementary because of the class sizes and how I try to maintain those class sizes as to the numbers that we want. So because of that, Audi and I looked at this and we decided that we wanted the policy to, 1, be truly reflective of how we're managing open enrollment these days, and 2, make a couple of changes that we think will improve the process. And one of the things that Dr. Roy was sensitive to is that the policy as currently constructed almost hangs your open enrollment over your head if you're the student. You better do this and you better not do that, because if you do, you might be sent back to your home school. That's not the spirit of it. The board changed the policy a number of years ago to say that once you are approved for an open enrollment in elementary, you need not apply for that annually, that you are guaranteed that placement through elementary school. Now, we have to have some mechanisms by which they have to live up to their transportation and attendance requirements, because then that hurts the student if the student isn't getting to school or is constantly late. So we left those things in, but we took out things like not having 2 or more academic failures in a marking period. Well, with the way we grade in elementary now, that was language that didn't make sense. And that the student would have no code of conduct infractions resulting in suspension. Well, we're not going to manage behaviors or other issues with students by just, throwing them out of a building and sending them back to their home school. The one thing we do try to make sure that people do understand is that if you accept an open enrollment, do that with full knowledge that your address will determine your middle school and your high school, that there is no open enrollment program for secondary. So think about that when you're deciding that you'd like an open enrollment. And the other thing we've come up against is that parents sometimes are disappointed that the open enrollment that they were approved for doesn't automatically give them a spot in the childcare program in that school because there may be a waiting list. So we've tried very hard to work on that, and I will sometimes call childcare, count those numbers again. Are you sure you don't have a spot for this person? But we want parents to understand that we can't guarantee that. So that's the spirit and the details of why you see that policy on this agenda.
Questions on this? I'm pretty straightforward. Dr. Donnelly?
I'd just like to say, Russ, I concur with your comment about the middle school situation, because I think parents really do, I think it needs to be stressed that an open enrollment opportunity at the elementary does not guarantee the open enrollment to middle school. And there are a lot of parents that get very upset, as you say, that when it comes time to go to sixth grade, they revert back to the middle school that their child would have originally gone to from the school that they were geographically assigned to, especially if they are different. The parent gets very upset because now the child's friends that they made K through 5, they transferred to kindergarten, are going to middle school X, and they're supposed to go to middle school Y. And that's something that parents really do need to take into consideration. A lot of them say, well, cross that bridge when I get to it. The problem is that bridge comes up very quickly. And then it's like, oh my goodness, now all my kids' friends are going to the other middle school and they're going to be by themselves and they won't know anybody, and that's going to be a hardship, and they're going to go. And that's something they really, so your idea that if you are going to transfer to another elementary school, pick an elementary school that still maintains the same middle school spending or catchment area that your original elementary school would, and not cross boundaries with middle school.
And we make sure that that's on the application now, so they will see it there, because they're not reading this, but we thought it couldn't hurt to have it in there as well for those who do consult the policy, but it's right on the application.
And there's no, I'm just wondering if there's any way to simplify for parents to know. Because a parent may be new to the area, and and their child goes to school X and they want to transfer to school Y, but they don't realize that they send it to different middle schools, and therefore they may not be aware of, well, what other elementary school could I go to for whatever reason that they don't want to stay in the elementary school they're assigned to. What other elementary school is available with that same catchment area for a middle school? Just, again, maybe in the conversation of their application, that could be brought to their attention, especially if it's across of middle schools when that person applies. But I know you do that, and then you work really hard to make.
But we, some principals are better at that than others, and if they call child accounting, they may get that full spiel, or maybe on some days they don't. So we could make that a standard procedure to make sure we communicate that.
Just a clarification, Russ, the second last line, the one right above the bold where it says being approved for open enrollment, it talks about students' time in elementary school unless we vote through number 6 above, there is no number 6.
Oh. Well, frankly, we will get rid of that.
That's the way we get around things?
Yeah, that's right.
We forgot to put number 6 in. Here's what number 6 says, is you're writing it down.
Oh, we forgot to tell you, but here it is.
Yeah, here it is.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Very
I
good.
have one quick question about students who had done the open enrollment on the elementary school, and then once they start the middle school, have to go back to their district location. Does that information follow them as well with when they start attending that middle school? So that it's not assumed that they know other children in the classroom?
The middle school, the grade 5 to grade 6 process always includes everything about that student. So they know what school they're coming from because of just the way the process works for registering them.
Some of the challenges are that there, if you're a fifth grader, your whole school goes to East Hills, and you're gonna be going to Northeast, then you're not part of the Northeast transition,
Yes.
because they're not planning that.
Right,
So
and so.
But they'll
They would
know
be
it.
invited to the summer
Yeah,
transition
yeah.
stuff,
Okay.
but not, if there's a visit to East Hills, they're gonna go to East Hills. To go
Exactly.
visit.
Yeah, because those transition programs start when the child is still in fifth grade.
Right.
And so that furthers then the assumption that they're going to be transferring into the middle school.
Yes,
So it's a
yeah.
question of when can this situation be caught in advance of the child being very confused because their parents aren't aware of it until later on.
Well, I think we could identify all fifth graders who are not going to the natural middle school. And we have to decide if, say, for instance, I am open enrolled to Farmersville, but my home middle school is Nichmond. So then we could identify that student, and then we have to see how we can't get them to the Nichmond grade 5 to grade 6 transition. We could certainly talk about that with Jack and the principal.
Please, I just feel like when the child is more comfortable with where they're going without the surprise.
Well, I don't think it's a
that could also-
surprise. I mean, they know,
They know.
but unless they forgot.
Well, that's typically.
What I was responding to your question,
Yeah.
Dr. White, was the school accepting the fifth grader into sixth grade will know where they come from, where the student comes from.
Okay.
But you're right, they don't automatically get involved in that transition plan that you're talking about, but we could certainly talk about that with principal.
I don't need to go too far into the depth with this, but I just feel like the sixth grade is such a tenuous transition time anyway. That if there's a way that we can assist those few kids who are going to be a little bit more challenged than others, if there's a way to just put a heads up with
It's a
principals.
good thought. Yep.
Just thought. Thank you.
And I'm not trying to speak for Dr. Mays in the fact that I'm pretty sure that when my daughter transitioned from Hanover to Richmond, there was the Hanover bus that came for the day, but then there was also a day schedule that included private, parochial, charter, anyone who was not part of those catchment schools. So I'm sure that child would be included in that day as well.
Well, we'll follow up to make certain by talking to the principals. That's the way to know.
Thank you.
Great. Other questions or comments on that policy? Dr.
I'm just gonna
Becker?
add that I'd like to change the project so like the lines here too. That discussions about open enrollment happen after the students fully registered with the district. That change a lot. I mean, all of our elementary schools are excellent, and so parents feel good about registering their child with the district period. And then the open enrollment happens after that.
Over recent years, we've become a little stricter about insisting that the visit to the home school has to take place before we'll consider the open enrollment, so that principal has an opportunity.
People have changed their mind once they walk
And they
in.
have.
on the principal.
Yeah.
They really have.
All right. So that is reading number 1. So we'll see that back next month for reading 2 and then final approval. All right. No more discussion items. We have 2 information items. There's a PFM update that you see there. We closed on those bonds, if you remember, back in the fall for another 4 years. I will draw your, I'm sure Mrs. Dover wants to speak, but I'll draw your attention to page 4, just shows our outstanding debt and the life of that and where we're at as far as all our notes, both the fixed rate and the variable rate ones. Mrs. Dover, anything you want to add?
This is just information that was shared with the authority at their reorganization meeting last week. So we're sharing it with the board for your information as well. Again, and it's just an overview and a recap.
Yeah. Not much changed on this since Scott was last here, I believe in September, October, somewhere around there. So. All right, and then 3.02, Mr. Giordano, some updates from HR as well as the SDS commercials I've seen on 69 News in the morning. That's exciting.
Yes, so they are now armed with, Deb, if you could pull up that flyer, please. They created this based upon the information received from me after you approved the new wage rates. And so they have plastered this in as many places as makes sense for their purposes. And we have plastered it in every school, in at least the main office, if not elsewhere. We had the production office make us posters of it, not huge posters, but they look like this. And we'll make sure that this is out on our social media. It's on our website. We want to maximize what you gave us to work with. So thank you. And STS also put it out on their internal STS employee portal. They updated their BASD application page to include this information. They informed all the current BASD substitutes for us as to what the new pay rates would be depending upon the assignment that they're in. And obviously they're using that as they speak to new recruits. Since that October job fair that we had, and with their other efforts, I think we've realized about 30 subs. Not great, but not bad. So, once again, anything we can do to try to encourage people to give it a shot. And then, of course, that with Act 91 that the governor signed, they've loosened up some of the requirements around subs, and we're working with that, and I've made sure SDS is educated about what those regulations are.
I was actually kind of curious about that, especially could you say a little something about the guest teacher program? Because I'm thinking I get students at the university, and this might be something they'd like to do, or at least try out. So what does that entail exactly?
All right, so when you're talking about your students at the university, they are able to work as a substitute teacher and be paid under Pennsylvania Act 86. I didn't want to muck this up with that because the colleges know that.
Okay.
So they can work for, I think, up to 20 days for their own cooperating teacher.
Education major.
Education
Yeah,
majors.
I'm thinking about just general, like the ones that get a bachelor.
That's the guest teacher program. That we do.
With the graduate students?
Yeah, they've graduated.
Yes.
That's the guest teacher.
That's guest teacher. So you have a bachelor's degree and you'd like to substitute teach. You apply to STS as a guest teacher. They put you through the online training that is state approved through IU 13. It's either I think it's IU 13 out in Harrisburg or Lancaster, Lebanon. They're the approved providers of that online. IU 20 has a program as well, but that's all not through STS. STS got their ability and approval to do that through the state, through the other IU.
And how long is that?
It's a certain number of hours.
It's less than 2 days.
Not very long.
12 hours.
About 8 or 12 maybe.
Yes, very short.
It's
It's
not-
not the IU
It's not a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's something, sometimes students express an interest in teaching, but aren't sure they want to go for a master's, and this would be something that I could
Absolutely.
say, hey, try this out for.
And we've contacted every college that we work with about this, to say nothing of asking for December grads with certain certifications if they have. So that's moving along.
Mr. Giordano, before you move on from that, is it worthwhile in all our video production we're doing to maybe interview a current sub that likes it and says, hey, this is what a day's like. It's fun. This is what you do, not like one sitting in the corner, but like, who are our good subs that really like it, come in a couple days a week and maybe just talk
We
about,
do. We have a number of them. We have some who've been doing it for years.
here's a testimonial. This is what it's actually like. I was mom or dad, now I'm subbing. It's not bad. It's a couple days a week.
I can think of a couple right off the top of my head.
You know, push it out on the socials and let people see it. And maybe that helps. I don't know.
Not
Maybe
bad
even
idea.
tell them something, if, my kids come home and they're like, oh, I had my favorite sub today. It's funny how much I hear about the dogs and
because I feel like it's intimidating. You have parents who maybe come into the building and think, all right, I like volunteering with PTO, but no way am I subbing for a day. But maybe if they knew what was really entailed, and they know the situation rings, a lot of those parents who come in are just there to help the school in any way they can, and know that this would be a huge help, even if it's just once or twice a month, or a week, or 5 days a week, whatever they would do.
I like it. Anything else on this? Then very briefly, you're probably aware to one degree or another, Dr. Roy has done a video and sent all kinds of information to parents and to faculty and staff. But a number of weeks ago, I pulled a group together in the district to see if we couldn't come up with a better way to meet a couple objectives. One, communicate as efficiently as possible to parents any information that we needed to get to them about their children who are identified as having a COVID issue. And having that done in such a way that it didn't require constant phone calls. So what can we do about that? So a number of people worked on, I was very, very pleased with the result. Claire did the bulk of the scripting. She was just wonderful as usual in assisting. Mark James did the technical part of it. We talked to Dave Horvath and Wendy Costanzo at East Hills as a principal and nurse team that has to manage this every day. I had talked to the secondary principals in general at first, and then we just used East Hills as our case study. And so we're really pleased that it seems to be working, that parents go onto the website, they fill out this form, that goes to this Google repository. The parent then gets an email back, automatically generated, telling them when their student can return based upon how they answer the question. And then the nurses are not manually entering data into a spreadsheet in order to track all of this. The Google form goes into a Google spreadsheet. And so we can manage it that way. So, there's still labor involved in managing all of this, believe me. But this appears to be well received by parents so far, based on what I've been told. I think the principals appreciate it, and we're able to give relief to the nurses who were really, in addition to principals, shouldering the biggest burden of communicating on every case. So we're doing it for students. The staff process is still working the way it has been done. And Todd Repture has done a yeoman's job of keeping up with that and communicating things. We're not automating that, although if the number of cases keep going, we might want to. So if you have any questions about that, we have Claire here, we have Dr. Roy here, we have me here, and Mr. James is here too. Oh, there he is. Okay. So we can answer any questions you might have about it.
Questions?
Are you hearing anything from out there in the community about it? No?
No, it's an overwhelming job. So I mean, this, I think, is the next step, because we're still accomplishing what we need to, and either a parent's going to report it or they're not. And this isn't going to change that. If anything, it makes it easier than just leaving a message with a nurse in the middle of the day and not being able to get a call back because they're just so overwhelmed. So I think it makes sense.
And those situations that require a phone call, they'll get a phone call.
As of this moment, 409 parents or 409 children have been reported on the form. Not all positive, because we also asked if you were close contact outside of school of someone. But a lot of positives, as you saw, we had 143 cases, well, we saw your email, posted on the dashboard today. That will be, what came in Saturday, Sunday, today. So we posted. So 33 of those are staff. So we are seeing that continued number with staff. Russ, maybe you want to say more about that?
Yes, so on the tracking form we use for staff, unless I missed a few, I counted up everybody who's still not colored in green. Green means the case is closed. You're back. you're back at work. I count about 25 listings on that of teachers who are still open cases for one reason or another. They're quarantining, or they, have to wait for their test results, or they have to wait for 5 days after they get their test results. And we're holding our own. Today, for instance, we had a really good day with substitutes. We were well over 70% after we moved 2 people from 2 elementaries over to Clearview because we needed them there. So this was one of our better days lately. I was pretty pleased. So hopefully that'll continue.
I know that, for example, 33 added today, that's faculty and staff. So it's a smaller number of teachers in a large district. When you parse it out, across all the departments, 22 schools, we haven't had, a crushing hit on any one location. Though we see the numbers in transportation, of course, we never had much room to give anything. But fingers crossed so far, as far as the staffing, we've been managing through it.
And I will give a shout out, so the board knows this, that at Liberty in particular, many of the teachers in the academic departments have been very good about picking up an additional block of teaching. And I've talked to you about that before, about how we do that. But I'm very, very thankful, grateful, and I think the Liberty teachers deserve to know that the board knows and appreciates what they've done this year.
Kids would be hurt if we didn't, because especially for, upper level math class, you're not going to find that some. So when the teacher picks up that section and adds it, so now they're teaching all day long with only a 30-minute lunch break. That's a load, but it's so much better for the kids, and the teachers are really stepping up, as they are all across the district, but that's a particular situation where it's really helpful.
Questions? Good with that. All right. Anything else, Mr. Giovanni?
I don't think so.
All right. Very good. Thank you. Any other information items we missed before we go on to the recommendations there for next week? Okay, you see a laundry list there. We have 17 items to go through. Most are some standard routine business, starting with 4.01, which is 2 transportation contracts with parents transporting students to and from school for various reasons. 4.02 is a supplemental transportation contract moving some small capacity runs away from CDL drivers within the district so they can drive a bus to this outside service.
Think student Uber.
Student Uber. 4.03 is a contracted service with Franklin Covey, who does the Leader in Me, and that's providing some neuroscience and self-care training.
Upcoming in service.
For the President's Day in service. 4.04, in similar fashion, there was a RFP that went out for some SEL training for staff. And you see the parameters of that on the bottom, not to exceed just under 30,000, 29.8. Certainly in hot demand at the moment. 4.05 is some math support, looking for some summer, second semester of summer training for math interventions there. You see the information on that. This is an outside person outside the district,
Who has been very successful and well received in his work so far in the district, primarily abroad.
Good. 4.06 is a first for us. It's approving the opt-out of Act 1. Say second time for us. Sorry, this is good. Not the norm for us approving.
I knew one of us who didn't say the first time, and she was ready to say the second time.
When was the first time? Last year? That doesn't count as COVID. I don't count last year. We had to.
This is all still 1 year.
It's all still 1 year. Thank you, Mr. Lozing. But it's still this year. Yes. So that's the Act 1 opt-out resolution there. That just means we don't have to jump through the hoops and approve the budget, 5 or 6 times. We can just have a normal budget process, which we'll still have. We'll have budget workshops and hearings going forward. It's not what you're used to with those February approvals. 4.07 is the audit report that you saw tonight. That's just up for approval. Formality next Monday. 4.08 is a change in the overtime rate for the city police officers due to a contract increase that they had. So you see the change there, small, a little less than $2 an hour for any athletic events, anything we use city police for. 4.09, I will not pretend to understand, but Mrs. Bachman feels this is important. So something with the internet in this building. I don't even want to begin. Cloud-based DDoS filter and protection sounds great. Is it?
Mind you, $22 a month.
Yeah, $22 a month and it makes Hootie work. We're good. Anybody want further clarification on that? Did I explain it fairly well? Okay. Sorry. It's only for 6 months. 4.10 is the authorization to participate in the fuel oil bid again through the IU joint purchasing. We've done that for forever. Rule to that. 4.11 is some donations to musical instruments down at Rockville Middle School from Mr. Marvin King. So you see what he's donating there.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh, that's
4.12 is plan con approvals based off the bonds that we just refinanced in the recent, back in November, I guess it was. 4.13 is the annual list of polling places for the Lehigh and Northampton County primary elections coming up. No changes there. It's been long-standing that those buildings have been used. 4.14 is St. Luke's Vision vouchers. This is to replace the Vision van, if I'm correct, that used to come to the buildings. They're just giving out vouchers now for students and families in need. 4.15, we are rejecting bids for lockdown shades in the classroom. And I read this and it said we have done this before. I don't remember talking about this. Is this something new or we did lockdown? What are lockdown shades?
We did. No, that's just saying that that notation is on there for next meeting for the regular agenda.
Gotcha.
We haven't talked about.
What are
Lockdown shades are for internal, a lot of classrooms by the doors, there are windows alongside, so they're simply the.
They
block
black
off
out,
those
so you can't see through.
Right. Next to the door.
Construction paper?
No, it's just shade.
Oh, so you can take it up and down.
So these bids came in 3 times higher than anticipated, and we decided that we needed to rescope the project and put it out against back to construction paper.
Construction paper and tape. Works wonders. All right. 4.16 is what we talked about, the elimination of policy 701.1, the naming rights. And then 4.17 is the changes there with the agreement with STS based off our changes in teacher rates that we approved last year. Questions on any of those items? Anything you want more clarification on? They're all pretty straightforward, so I'm pretty quick, but
Just
Dr.
real
White?
quick, I don't need to be a.
No problem.
Lockdown shades go down fast, go up fast. Construction paper, it has to be.
Oh, I just meant permanent construction paper. Kids don't need to look out anyway. They've got their own.
Okay,
It's a
just want to make
distraction.
sure you were aware of this. Are you being nice?
All right. It's a terrible picture of teachers running with an intruder trying to take stuff.
Like
That's
scissors and tape.
not what I meant.
Oh.
Any other questions or comments on these items? All right. Courtesy of the floor, anybody wishing to speak? Took care of Mr. Antalix in the beginning. All right. Open forum, we'll have executive session after this. We have the usual routine, student discipline, personnel. I think that's probably it.
That is it.
Student discipline and personnel. Anything else for open forum? Yes, Dr. Beckman.
Just a quick thing that, when we were talking about the COVID update and, how reps are helping with that, reminded me that we had talked and my months and years all be together now, but at some point getting a safety update, that I know he's obligated to give us a safety update that includes certain parameters that are dictated by certain acts. So we've talked about sort of an expanded update from him on sort of broader picture of school safety, that was more sort of interaction with students and that kind of thing. And so just, again, that made me think that I don't know when that's typically on the calendar. It's not a summer thing. It's a summer thing. But it just is since I lost track, we just talked about it last summer, which is 6 summers. Right. I don't know.
Okay.
But it does make remind me that that's an update for we get at some point.
Okay, I made a note of that, Michael, thank you.
Anything else open forum? Mr. Lozey, you good?
I have a quick comment.
Go ahead.
I really enjoyed hearing what we brought forward today because a lot of it seems so student-centered. And I think that that's just great that the district continues to move in that direction. Hearing that we're trying to make the process easier, still fair, but easy, or not easier, that's not the right word, but with our open enrollment students, be just a student-centered approach. You know, this is really good. And I hope that the public is getting a good understanding that these are things that are beneficial to our kids and helps build our communities and strengthens our schools. And then just last part was a big kudos to the teaching staff, you know, hearing what we are doing with recruiting the substitute teachers and the changes that have been put in place to help mitigate some of the, frankly, just to give folks a breather with trying to do the contact tracing and the calls. Our teachers and our administrative staff have been going above board for a long time here, and I'm glad that we were able to give some recognition. It sounds like we're moving in the right direction. So, good work.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lozey. Anybody else? Mrs. Patrick?
I just want to say, though I love having Mr. Braun here, I love his little app.
Yeah, it worked well. I mean, you all can't see it, but we just have Mr. Lozey and Dr. Silva. It's a great picture, and when we talk, the camera angles jump around.
I can tell you, sitting here watching them, this is like as good as my seat, which is right at that table in front of you. Just like I'm sitting there. Yeah.
This is true.
You literally are sitting there.
Turns into like a sporting event to make a fellow ball.
Yeah. And you know, the microphone works. You're nice and loud. We can hear you.
Nice.
All right.
Hootie can come back.
Hootie can come back, and this was just for the board zooming in tonight. It doesn't have any effect on the at-home viewing. But Hootie did a great job, so very impressed. And for $22 a month, you can't beat it. This is great deal. All right. Should we stop there? All right. If there's nothing else, we will adjourn the committee meeting. We'll have open forum, executive session again, student discipline and personnel. And next Monday is our regular meeting back in the Hills.
Will we need another Zoom link for executive session?
You can hold on there, right?
I think we just stay here, Winston.
Okay.
Actually, no, I need to start another one.
All right, we're going to start another one for you to come back in.
Hi, Marie.
Bye.
Does Hootie have a cousin, the blowfish?
I'll send you both a new link.
Wait all night for that.
Okay.